I'm Jennie Gage, and this is Life Take Two.
There is something happening in this country that the old guard still cannot name. They keep staring at the polls and the donor spreadsheets as if those numbers can explain the ache in the working class heart. They cannot see that the ground has shifted under their feet. It is not left against right anymore. It is not the tired theater of red versus blue. It is the long-forgotten majority against the institutions that fed on them for half a century. And people are tired of being told that the bones they are thrown are blessings. They are tired of hearing that healthcare is too expensive to provide, and education is too costly to fund, and that the richest nation in human history somehow cannot afford to let its children dream. The working class left is rising because it is no longer willing to die quietly so that corporations can live loudly. And what terrifies the political establishment is not the ideology. It is the disruption of the donor class. It is the reminder that Adam Smith believed in competition and fairness, and that Roosevelt believed in a government strong enough to defend the weak from the powerful. It is the realization that this movement is not fringe. It is a reclamation. It is the people remembering that they have the right to demand better and a duty to refuse the crumbs. And this is not a revolution of theory. It is a revolution of memory. A remembering of what America was supposed to be before money replaced meaning and politics became a marketplace for the highest bidder. The working class left is rising again because it has finally remembered that the country belongs to those who built it with their own bare hands. Defiance till death.
The current United States government has turned into everything that the Revolutionary War was fought to prevent. Rich white men sitting on their thrones for far too long, with a government that in no way represents the people. Joe Biden was the oldest president in American history, with Donald Trump being the second oldest, Ronald Reagan being the third oldest. We're in a period where top leadership, especially the presidency, but also the House and the Senate, is held by people who are older than at any time in the past. The United States political class is aging. And one of the biggest problems with this is that the generational turnover with young people taking power has ground to a stop. Our political class is also far wealthier than the average working class American. And this older, wealthier leadership means less actual representation of younger generations like myself. Too many politicians on both sides are too old to lead at this time in their lives and far too out of touch to lead today's America. Hey everybody, welcome back. I took a week-long sabbatical to not celebrate Thanksgiving. I have another video coming up about that. I boycott Thanksgiving and my ultra-conservative family boycotts me. So I've been away and it's so nice to see you again. I've missed you guys. Can't wait to hear from you in the comments. As you know, I'm a former MAGA girly. I left MAGA 2 years ago at age 48 and then found myself immediately wanting to jump off a cliff because the Democratic Party sucks. In a lot of ways, my political transition out of MAGA felt like my relationship transition away from my ex-husband, Stinky Jake. In those early months after my 24-year marriage ended, I was just in an absolute panic because it's like, okay, well, Stinky Jake sucked. But now here I am out here on Tinder and Bumble with a bunch of nut jobs and what's a girl to do? Here I am like, la, 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 I'm free from Donald Trump and all those nut jobs. And then I remember the night that I sat down on my couch and watched the debates and I had a panic attack. I literally cried the rest of the night.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
I laid in my bed staring at the ceiling fan that night, just thinking, what the hell is going on out here? Because I thought the grass was greener on the other side. For a minute, my TikTok followers will remember I researched moving abroad, but Denmark and Finland are freezing. There's days of the year that you don't actually even see the sun. And for an Arizona girly, that cannot happen in my life. Italy is too expensive, and apparently learning Spanish fast enough to start a new life in Mexico isn't super realistic, especially at my age. I just don't think I can do it. And I don't want to leave my kids and my grandbaby behind either. Then I dipped a toe into the RFK world. For a while, honestly, he looked better than Biden. I know that was a weird era. It's hard to leave MAGA. When you get done watching this video, go over to leavingmaga.com and see some of the other stories that they put up there in addition to my story. Like, it is hard to transition out of MAGA. And for a lot of us, there just isn't a good place to land. Anyway, for a while, RFK looked better than Biden. And then the party just shoved Kamala Harris at us. And I'm sorry, I know that I'm going to make a bunch of you mad, but I didn't like Kamala Harris, not because I'm MAGA, but because I didn't like Kamala Harris for other reasons. And she had nothing to say, no vision at all. She was going to give us back abortions that we'd already had at one point. She was going to give us back LGBTQ rights, which again, we had already had, and give people a $25,000 down payment on a house credit when people can't afford houses anyway, and that just wasn't going to do a lot. Kamala had no vision, no blueprint, no dream for our future. And that was really hard for me because I just came from MAGA, where they have a very specific vision to make America great again in Project 2025 and all this stuff that carefully outlined everything. And over here on the other side, it was just a free fall and nobody was in charge. At times, it reminded me a little bit of the dystopian novel that I read in college. Of course, I'm sure some of you have read it, Lord of the Flies. And that's when it hit me. Democrats and Republicans are the same damn thing. A bunch of rich old geezers hanging on to power like it's the last slice of pie and only serving the rest of us at the table crumbs and the occasional dollop of Cool Whip. Democrat and Republican is just two different labels covering the same rot. Corporate money, dynastic donors, recycled candidates, and a political class that will sacrifice the next 50 years to protect its own legacy at all costs. I left MAGA thinking the other side would be better. A lot of people told me that. Welcome to the other side. Obviously, certain aspects of not being a fascist, Christian nationalist, bigoted, racist, sexist, white supremacist are certainly improvements over the community that I came from. But there is so much lacking. What I actually discovered is there is no other side. There's only class warfare disguised as democracy, and the same upper class people are in charge no matter which side of the aisle you're on, because neither side serves the working class that actually keeps America running. Both parties, the Republican and the Democrat, are operating as exclusive clubs for the wealthy, while the rest of us fight just to pay our rent, buy groceries, pay for medications and doctor's visits, health insurance, kids' braces. Brody's finally getting his braces on next week, and a car that isn't 20 years old. So when the reality of the chaos that exists over here on the Democratic side of the aisle really started to sink in, instead of getting my visa and relocating to somewhere in the south of Italy, I made a decision. I'm staying here. I'm fighting. Here's just a few of the things that I'm doing. I am, number one, volunteering for senatorial candidate Chris Volpe's campaign in Ohio. He's running for J.D. Vance's vacated seat. And no, I don't live in Ohio. I live in sunny Arizona. But every Senate seat matters to all of us. And this in particular is an important seat that the Democrats have lost for quite a while. So I work as a social media consultant, volunteering for free on Chris Volpe's campaign in Ohio. One of the first things I do every morning is touch base with Chris and help him in every way that I can. By the way, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about Chris and potentially donate to his campaign, Volpe for America, he's incredible. I would absolutely personally love to have this incredible leader in the Senate fighting for the rights of everyday Americans. I'm also talking about the state of America on my platforms here, podcasting, interviewing senators. I'm fighting with a coalition of friends to take back the Democratic Party. And I'm reaching out to Democratic leaders throughout the state of Arizona and some other states to let them know my opinion as a voter on the state of the Democratic Party. And yes, I've had questions from some of you as to whether or not any of these politicians have answered me. they have. I had the opportunity to interview Adelita Grijalva here just a few weeks ago, right before she was finally sworn in. I'll put that link in the description. I've had multiple congresspeople, senators, and gubernatorial offices respond to my emails and have had some pretty incredible phone conversations. And somewhere in the middle of all this, I had a moment. Kevin and I were at a fancy steakhouse last week for American Thanksgiving because my conservative Christian family disowned me. And so I have nowhere to go. I have another video on that. And we ordered their Thanksgiving dinner, which was actually steak and then potatoes and cranberry sauce and all the sides and everything. And I asked Kevin to pass me the potatoes while also bouncing ideas around in my head for this very script right here. And suddenly the perfect metaphor hit me like a truck. Here it is. Holiday themed. It's time for the Democratic Party to pass the fucking potatoes, because the people in Washington right now, they act just like my grandma used to do around the holidays. She didn't trust me to do anything, no matter how old I was. She didn't treat me like an adult at all. And one thing that she particularly didn't trust me to do was to make the mashed potatoes for Thanksgiving. I'd ask and she'd wave me off like, no, sweetie, we've always done it this way. Let me handle it. You know, tradition, gatekeeping, control disguised as wisdom. But when you're miracle of miracles, and honestly, I think it was because she had been in the hospital sometime that summer, so she wasn't feeling up to it. She let me host Thanksgiving dinner at my house for all of my rich Mormon uncles and their wives and all of the cousins and everybody. And y'all, it was the greatest Thanksgiving anyone had ever seen. My uncles literally turned to me like, holy hell, Jennie, what just happened? And yes, my mashed potatoes blew grandma's out of the water. Sorry, God rest her soul. She was amazing, but if we were having a potato contest, I won. America is full of Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, who would also make better mashed potatoes than the nanas running Washington. Our generation is capable, knowledgeable, and ready to lead, but the nanas in Washington won't step back and let us do so. They don't trust us. And just like my mashed potatoes are better, candidates like Chris Volpe have better policies, better courage, better imagination, and better integrity than most of these rich, old establishment Democrats. And sometimes I feel like the next generation doesn't just deserve a little seat at the table with Nana at the head. They deserve to run the whole damn kitchen. So when I talk to Democratic candidates across the country, when I hear that that Democratic establishment has yet to acknowledge Chris Volpe, who's running for J.D. Vance's Senate seat in Ohio there, hasn't offered any type of support. And then after he starts his campaign, they drag Sherrod Brown, who's 72 or 73 or something, back out and drop him in front of all of us instead of even dialoguing with Chris to see if he's worthy of that support. It's exactly like grandma clutching that mashed potato bowl while the rest of the adults are in the kitchen saying, maybe it's time for someone else to make the potatoes. We don't have to wait till you die to let someone else make the damn mashed potatoes. But grandma won't move, not because she's the best at the mashed potatoes, not because she's the only person capable of it, but because she's terrified to trust anyone else. And honestly, she just likes to be in charge. And the Democratic establishment is the same. Let's stop pretending that they're the good guys, that they're the better side to be on. I mean, sure, theoretically they should be, but they're not. We should have stopped acting like Biden was some benevolent grandpa that we should all get behind. We should have gotten the hell out of that race. Let's stop pretending Kamala showing up with absolutely no vision was fine. It wasn't. And listen, you can scroll through YouTube here and you can see a million different videos about people blaming Trump and MAGA for this and that. And yes, certainly they're insane. But Trump is not our only problem, and Trump didn't cause this. We actually blame Trump right now for like every bad thing in America. But we should be blaming Biden because he wouldn't step down and pass the potatoes. And every other elderly leader supporting him who decided to gamble the country's safety by keeping an elderly candidate in office. And I am careful not to lean into ageism, because as a 51-year-old woman myself, I wholeheartedly believe that there's wisdom that we glean through our lived experiences that you can't learn in books. You can't learn in a university or learn from somebody else. And it's a mistake to block that wisdom out and discriminate against our tribal elders. But there is so much inherent risk in electing a president as old as Biden was when he was put in front of us. Cognitive decline, medical vulnerability, inability to understand modern technology, inability to relate to modern economics, just the inability physically to keep up with the tasks at hand. We should not have been asked to take those risks. He should never have been the nominee. We need a new generation of candidates. We need people who aren't trying to glide into retirement, but trying to build a long-term future. We need leaders who understand this economy right now, this housing crisis right now, environmental collapse, education access, childcare, student debt, digital infrastructure, cybersecurity, AI policy, the cost of living today, and the mounting healthcare crisis that us and the younger generation face. We need candidates who are actually living all these things themselves. And the others, most of the leaders in both parties, Republican and Democrat, should be eating brunch with their friends, golfing, or playing pickleball, like everybody else their age. The future should absolutely not be formed and managed by people who are not even going to be here to see it. You may not know this, but these elderly politicians, this is kind of a new trend, partly because with good medical care, they're just lasting longer. But this is a new phenomenon to have such elderly people leading the parties and refusing to step back. Here's the age of some of the past presidents. Starting with FDR, he was 51 when he was elected. That's my age. You guys, 51. Truman was 60. Eisenhower was 62. JFK was 43 years old when he was elected President of the United States. Lyndon B. Johnson, 55. Nixon, 56. Gerald Ford, 61. Carter, he was my first love. I loved his Southern accent. Carter, 52 years old. He was just a year older than me. Ronald Reagan was 69 years old. H.W. Bush seemed like he was ancient. He was 64 years old. Bill Clinton, 46 years old. George W., 54. Barack Obama, 47. And then boom, here we go, Donald Trump, 70. Joe Biden, 77 years old. In June, Donald Trump is going to turn 80. He is 79 years old right now. Let me say this one more time. The future should not be run by people who will not even be alive to experience it. Yes, this is me saying it's time for the boomer politicians to sit down, step aside, and, become mentors, which is what you should be doing at your age. Become fundraising machines for the younger generation of candidates. Become advisors, become campaign volunteers. Go door to door and canvass. Be anything but a candidate. We need an upper age limit like the military has, like we place on pilots, like we place on federal judges. Why is Congress exempt? Why are presidents exempt? Johnny is a perfect example of what leadership can look like. Experienced, informed, mature, but young enough to understand the world we actually live in, like most of the past 20 American presidents were before him. They were in their prime of actually living in the world. And again, I know that every one of my videos comes back to class warfare, but this is just the perfect example. America is trapped in a class dictatorship, and the Democrats aren't any more representative of the working class than Trump and his oligarch buddies. So what do? Here are a few solutions I want on the table when we rebuild the Democratic Party, which is what we're all working to do right now. No corporate lobbyist money. If you represent corporations, you don't represent citizens. We need to get rid of that. Number 2, we have to have term limits. Service should be a rotation, not a golden throne that you sit on until you drop dead. Number 3, ban gerrymandering. Politicians should pick policies, not voters. Number 4, public campaign financing only. If everyday Americans like Chris Volpe in Ohio can't afford to run, it isn't democracy. Number 5, ranked choice voting nationally so that we can break the two-party chokehold. Number 6, mandatory public debates, not staged pageants, real questions, regular intervals, more of them so that we can get those candidates in front of us and see who they really are. Biden should have been put out in debates long before that. We would have all had a really clear picture of what was going on. Number 7, upper age limits. If you won't live in the future you create, you should not be the one creating it. So I'm no longer fighting just Trump and MAGA. I am now focusing my energy on fighting and changing the Democratic Party because I want a fully rebuilt Democratic Party that represents workers, renters, educators, caregivers, the medically bankrupt, the student loan buried, the families balancing 2+ jobs just to survive, the children like my 7 who are aging into adulthood, stepping into an America that treats them like garbage. In other words, the everyday Americans who actually make this country run. People like Chris Volpe, people like Mamdani. God, I love Mamdani. I'm so glad he won. People who show up because they want a future, not because they're trying to protect a legacy. I personally didn't leave MAGA and lose my entire community and family so that I could kneel at the altar of a different oligarchy. I left because I want a country that treats citizens like citizens, not background extras in a theater of power. So here's my demand. Pass the potatoes. Pass the baton. Move aside. Make room. Teach us, mentor us, support us, fund us, but stop blocking us, or we're going to block you. And if America is going to have a fighting chance moving into the future, it's time for the old geezers to sit down like Joe Biden should have done about 2.5 years ago, stepping out of that campaign cycle, and for the rest of us to finally run the kitchen. I do hope that you appreciate my holiday allegory in this video. I will be hanging out in the comments I'll be hanging out in the comments for a while to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, everybody. Nice to see you again. Mwah.